Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone? Happy Tuesday. I was going to say happy Wednesday. I'm trying to move through this week faster than I realized. All right. So, welcome back. Welcome back. I am Alicia Johnson, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to be here and to be able to offer this work to everyone who crosses my path. And so, for those of you who are returning, hello, hello, hello. Good evening to you. Hey, Michelle, how are you? Good evening, everyone. So, we are coming here every night for the next 18 days now. We are now at day 12. So we're coming here every night to work through forgiveness, to work through forgiveness. And so forgiveness for me is a very powerful tool. Forgiveness is something that everyone needs to understand, that everyone needs to get a handle on, so that you can begin to move through your life more powerfully, so that you can begin to move through your life untethered, so that you can begin to move through your life in a way that heaven is able to move you easily, so that you remain malleable in the hands of God. And so, this is why this forgiveness work is so important for me. Because for those of you who know me, and for those of you who don't, for those who will cross my path as we do this work and go deeper into the work, one of the things that you have to understand is that I made a promise to God many, many, many years ago that if heaven would show me how to turn around all of the areas of my life that were a mess, my marriage, my parenting, my career, all of those things, that I would squeal like a pig. And one of the things that heaven allowed me to learn very powerfully, a tool that heaven allowed me to kind of unearth, if you will, is forgiveness. And so it is my responsibility to share this work with whoever crosses my path. So I will always be a big proponent for forgiveness. I don't care how egregious the act was, or how angry you get, or how upset you are. Forgiveness is powerful. Forgiveness doesn't mean that the offense was not bad. The forgiveness work doesn't mean that you were not hurt by it. The forgiveness work does not minimize what happened to you. But what the forgiveness work does is that the forgiveness work helps you to see things from a different and higher perspective, so that you no longer use it as fuel, as fire. Now you use it as fuel. Okay. So you're no longer using your anger and your forgiveness to just tear things down. Now you are using it as a fuel to move you forward. So tonight we are going a little bit deeper into the work as it relates to forgiveness, and we are now at day 12. Day 12, forgiving yourself for mediocrity. Assignment: reread your dedication so that you will remain pinpoint accurate in your journaling focus. List all the areas of your life where you have put forth minimal effort. Why? Identifying the areas where you are just muddling through will help you to see why you are where you are. Benefit: the benefit of identifying the mediocre areas of your life will assist you as you enter into this phase. As you begin to create your new life, you will begin to develop a zero tolerance policy for mediocrity in any area of your life. Day 12, forgiving yourself for mediocrity. Now, tonight, just like all of the other nights, this is your work to do. This isn't anyone else's responsibility. And so, for those of you who are just joining us, we're now diving into day 12 of the forgiveness work. And tonight we are forgiving ourselves for mediocrity. Hello, hello, hello to those of you who are joining. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. And if you are new here, feel free to check out the archive so that you can follow along and you can do the previous day's work so that you can catch up with us. And the recordings will be there so you can listen at your leisure. But the most important thing is that you do the work. There is no good in just having the work and listening to the work if you are not applying the work. So, application is one of the main keys as it relates to seeing that needle move in your life. So, it's very important that you do the work. Mediocrity is something that God had to really deal with me on. And this was so humbling for me because when God began to show me how I was just muddling through, and this I'm not going to take the hit for everybody, okay? I take a lot for the team, but you're going to have to carry your own weight with this one. Where do you or where have you slacked off, and where are you operating in mediocrity because you just don't like what you're doing? You are just not pleased with where you are in life. You're just not pleased with where you are living. You're just not pleased with the job that you have. You're just not pleased with the friends that you have. You just, it's like it's okay, but it's not the best. And so this was very powerful for me. And prayerfully, you will learn something from my experience so that you can modify your own attitudes and do what you need to do to make those adjustments. But one of the things that heaven had to really bring to my attention is that I was always pushing off or putting my happiness or my success or my joy, putting it off to the next thing. So what I mean by that is that I'll be happier when I get my next car. I'll be more joyful when I get a bigger raise. I'll be more excited when I have the right house. I'll be more excited when whatever it is. I'll put forth more effort when this thing is better, when I have a better computer, a better phone, a better, you fill in the blank. I don't know what it is for you. But how many times are you putting forth your best effort until the best comes to you? Stop it. This is the wrong approach. I promise you. Learning to maximize everything that I have that's in my hands, that is within my sphere of influence, was very powerful. And what God began to show me is that by waiting until all of the conditions were right, that I was squandering the present moment, that I was wasting the opportunity that I was given to be fulfilled at that very moment in time. And my big mama used to say, just because you don't think that you have everything that you think that you need doesn't mean you cannot take care of what you have right now. And what I mean by that is, and this was very powerful for me because when I started to think back, and I've had a very, how can I put it, a very varied life. So I know what poverty is and I know what extreme wealth is, okay? So I grew up in a family where a lot of my great aunts and a lot of my relatives on on both of my parents sides, I'm from Alabama, so people that lived in like shotgun houses, people that lived on, like, we lived in the country, but there were people that lived out, like my daddy took us to visit like some of his family that was even further out in the country. And I was like, oh my God. And I'll never forget one time we drove, like, we turned off this little road and the road took us, you could tell that previously this was like plantation type house with the little houses around it. And it was like, but they had turned to sharecroppers then. And but there were some of my family that were still living almost like it was, slavery time. It was just like, okay, do they know we free, right? They know we free. And I was just like floored. And then I went to school with people that were like uber rich, okay? People that had like libraries, their family names were like libraries and buildings, and so they had like old legacy money. And the difference, the extremes were very powerful because heaven helped me to start to solidify what true wealth really is. And when God began to help me to really delve deeply into what I want for my life, and this is why it's very important that you identify what your kingdom requires, that you identify what it is that heaven needs you to have, okay? So, one of the things that was very interesting, and I always love to go visit like my great aunts on my dad's side and to go visit. Oh my gosh. So the houses were really small, right? Just very humble means, just very humble, but very generous, very loving. This one room shack, by most people's standards, was the richest and most loving and the most warm. I mean, it was like everything in that house was infused with pride and love and joy. They may not have had much, but whatever they had, they were willing to share. And that was beautiful. And my great aunts and my cousins, like they would take pride in the little that they did have. Like for my big mama, for example, I still to this day have like the quilts, the handmade quilts that my grandmother and her sister would make. And they used to put their little initials in there so they would know whose quilt was whose. Now I made this one. I made this one. Your grandmama made this one, but this one's mine. So you're gonna know whose is who. And you can feel like every time I'm under those quilts, they are so heavy. Like they put so much love and so much warmth and so much joy. Like I still the the love has transcended well beyond their transitions. That's excellence. Excellence is when the work that you put into a certain thing is so powerful that it saturates the atmosphere so much so that death does not destroy it. When you're operating in excellence, excellence has a rhythm of its own. Mediocrity fades. And what God began to show me is that when you operate in excellence, your work is going to extend far beyond your expiration. And a lot of people in the world talk about leaving a legacy, and that legacy, 9 times out of 10, is tied into some monetary, um, in some increment, some monetary increment. Like you want to leave your children X amount of money, or you want to leave them stocks, or you want to leave them whatever. But if the work that you have performed to amass this wealth was done in a way that was destructive of other people, that was backstabbing, that was rooted in competition, that was all of these things, and it was not done in excellence, just know that that legacy is not going to last long. I personally know people who have acquired like an inheritance or something like that, and because the inheritance or the whatever they acquired was done in such a poor way, or in a mediocre way, or not in the fullest form of excellence, a lot of struggle comes with that. So when you are operating in mediocrity, just know that whatever you're doing will not have that staying power. And this is why a lot of people vacillate back and forth between this idea and that idea. I want to do this. I want to do that. I'm going to do this. I want to. And I've seen this over and over and over and over again, especially in the work that I do. I have been doing this work since 2009. And in 2009, that was when God really began to drive home the fact that I, Alicia Johnson, needed to get my whole life together in spirit and truth. And in order to achieve this excellence that heaven was requiring, God what required me to go really deep in this thing spiritually, mentally, and physically. A lot of times people just want to be excellent in the natural so that people can see what you're doing. So that people can give you the thumbs up and admire what you're doing. But God was like, for the work that I have to do, God was like, your approach has to be different. You have to be excellent spiritually first. But in order to be excellent, in order to operate from a higher perspective, you have got to give up your mediocre approach to your spiritual development. Mediocrity in as it relates to your relationship to heaven, in order for you to transfer mediocrity into excellence, you have to really evaluate your prayer life. You have to really evaluate your spiritual process. And what God began to show me is that I was operating at such a mediocre level when it came to my spiritual work that God was like, you are not going to go far. You are not going to have long lasting implications. Your work is going to fall flat if you continue on in this vein. It floored me because I was at church every time the doors open. I was giving religiously. I was giving so good that I had my tithes on like auto pay. I was feeding the homeless. I was volunteering at church. I was checking it all off the list. But God had to help me to realize that those were all mediocre efforts, because God had to help me to understand that God is a creator and not a duplicator. So all of my actions as it related to my spiritual maturation looked like a cookie cutter copy of what other people were doing. Pretty much the majority, I wouldn't say 50%, but a large percentage of the church that I was attending, they had the auto pay. So that was, you're just mimicking what other people are doing. They announce it from the pulpit. We now have have a credit union so you can now have your funds directly taken from your paycheck and you don't even have to worry about it. Oh, yeah, let me sign up for that. Everybody's gone. You're joining certain programs because you want to feel good about yourself. You want to be able to check that off the list so you have your bragging rights. Mediocrity, being mediocre. I'll never forget the day that God told me to take my tithes off of auto pay. I was like, "What? Surely this is not of God. Get thee behind me, Satan. Just get behind me. This is evil." And the message kept coming, cancel it, cancel it, cancel it. Because this is keeping you in a state of mediocrity. And God was like, as long as you continue to follow the leader instead of following God, you're not going to go very far. So after a while, I canceled my auto pay. And then God was like, give when I say give. I was like, what? Give when I say give. God said, if you want to learn how to operate in excellence, then you have to learn to operate and to move when heaven says move, because heaven knows the appointed time for everything. This means that you have to recalibrate your hearing, you have to recalibrate your seeing, you have to recalibrate every aspect of your life so that you can hear in spirit and in truth the excellence that heaven has in store for you. This is why this work is so important. So that you can learn how to establish your degree of excellence. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, as long as you have learned how to calibrate your hearing to only hear what God is saying to you and to only see where heaven is showing you and how heaven is directing you. That and only that will lead you to excellence. Once you begin to allow yourself to spiritually connect to the excellent directives that heaven provides, then your mind, spirit first, mind second, and body third. Your mind has to elevate and to be renewed to a place of excellence so that it is in alignment with the spiritual directives that heaven gives. You cannot operate in excellence if you are having mediocre thoughts. Once God began to show me, like in a spiritual, like in the spirit realm, when God began to show me in the heavenlies how excellent my life could be if I just continued to follow the instructions, God was like, your life is going to be good. But you've got to operate in excellence spiritually, and you've got to operate in excellence mentally. This is why this work at this point is being offered right now at this time, so that we can start to renew our minds and to replace the worldly interactions, the worldly obstacles, the worldly interferences with an excellent choice. Having this call between 8 and 8:30 p.m. every night, Monday through Friday, gives you the opportunity to renew your mind and replace at least 30 minutes hold that the world has on you and giving it to heaven, so that you can gradually and consistently start to renew your mind. Renew your mind to know that you have different choices that you can make. Renew your mind to know that you can do things differently. Renew your mind to know that heaven has a different plan for you. The mediocre thoughts that we are conditioned to have sound like, this is always going to be my life because I only finished this much of school. This is always going to be my life because I grew up here. This is always going to be my life because I'm not as smart as X, Y, and Z. This is always going to be my life because of the color of my skin or my gender or whatever. I don't know what it is. Whatever you got to do to renew your mind. I know what I had to do to renew my mind. One of the things that I had to do to renew my mind was to give up that lack mentality. My mind was saturated with thoughts of lack. We don't have enough money for that. Oh, that's gonna run out. Oh, that's looking low. Oh, that's real. Everything looked small. Everything looked like it wasn't enough. Everything, it was ridiculous. God was like, until you get rid of that mediocre and lack riddled mindset, we can't do anything. So I had to expand that. I see abundance everywhere. There's absolutely nothing that you can tell me that Alicia Johnson cannot do. If God has convinced me that it can happen, it will happen. Now, I can't give you all the ins and outs of how it's going to happen. I can't tell you from A to Z. But I know that if God said it is going to happen, it's going to happen. And I am committed and convinced of that. So my question to you is where have you settled for a mediocre approach to your spiritual life? Do you pray prayers by rote? Do you still pray the prayers of your youth? Are you still afraid to ask God questions? Are you still afraid to say certain things to God? Are you stuck on the hellfire and damnation and afraid that you're going to be struck down at every turn? Where are you living a mediocre existence? And when heaven reveals those areas to you, the thing that I love the most is that you can plead insanity. Lord, I realize I have been living a mediocre existence as it relates to my spiritual life. I like to plead insanity because I did not know, and heaven will forgive. Where have you been living a mediocre life as it relates to adjusting and renewing your mind? Lord, I have had some very diminished thoughts. My thinking has been so small. I plead insanity. I just didn't know better. And where are you just living in mediocrity physically? Because once you learn to operate spiritually, mentally, and physically, you should only be doing what you have heard God say spiritually and mentally. Your body should not be making decisions for you mentally and spiritually. A lot of times we make so many moves in the natural, and then we are expecting our mind to get in alignment, and then we are expecting the spirit realm, we're expecting heaven to co sign it. This is why so many of us get off track. This is why I used to get off track so many times because I would make the move in the natural, no matter what the move was. And then I would try to get my mind right and get it into alignment and convince myself that I made the right move. And then I'm praying to ask heaven to co sign it. God, will you please let this work? Will you please let this work? Will you please let this work? I'm just praying that this will work. I pray that this will work. God, please let it work. God doesn't need to be a cosigner on anything. The roles have got to be reversed. So tonight, as you are going through your night, as you are allowing heaven to work with you as it relates to this forgiveness work, have fun with this, because when heaven reveals these areas of mediocrity to you, be excited. Be very excited, y'all. Because when heaven shows you the areas where you, like, even now, when God shows me certain things, I get excited because that means that there is more available to me. So don't be upset when heaven begins to convict you. Be excited when you have that little inkling inside of you, when you do something and you know it's less than your best, and God is like, you know, you can do that better. You should just say to yourself, you sure right. Let me go ahead and resend this. I do that all the time. I have a day gig and I have this work that I do with the 1212 community. Now, I love the work that I do at the 1212 community. Everything that I do, I want it to be the best. And where I cannot do it the best, I have an entire team that helps me to show up even better than I could even imagine. So where I may not be able to present the best, I know what the best looks like. I know what the best is, that as it relates to what God has given me to do. So if I physically can't do it, God has connected me with other people who can, so that I know that I can deliver in excellence. Now on my day gig, not so much. You have no idea how many times a day God is dinging me. Don't send that email. Don't send that backspace, that delete that, put that in the draft and then come back to it. Okay. I can't say that part. No, you cannot say that part. Emails will come through. Oh, I'll let somebody else answer that one. No, you answer it. I don't want to answer. You know how big this team is? Somebody else can do it. You do it. Daggone it. And I do this and I say this because I understand that the quicker that I get through this, that heaven is going to promote me to the next level. Like the quicker that I learn, and this is why I always say, learn to be a quick study. Now, I may play around a little bit, but eventually, now I do it. Like I'm not going to take anything from one day to the next. So God and I, we may do this for sport for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but heaven always wins. Because I know that by resisting these directions, these directives, that I am delaying the time that heaven wants me to spend with the actual blessing. So it behooves you greatly. It doesn't matter what it is. Like I have this thing about making my bed. And when I make my bed, I like have to pull. I don't care, like every morning. I don't I have to I pull all the covers back and I have to pull it from the bottom. I gotta tuck it. It's gotta be tight and smooth. I just have to do it in excellence. Excellence that's for me. Because that's the agreement that heaven and I have. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. But as long as God and I are in alignment, that's all that matters. So it doesn't matter what the world says. What matters is what has God told you to do. What are you not doing in excellence that you absolutely positively know that God is requiring you to do it? This is why when we go through our declutter challenge, it's funny because a lot of the things that heaven will require you to do don't make sense to anybody else. I know when God told me to clean up my junk drawer, I was like, what does this have to do with anything? For me, it had to do with everything. So tonight is your night that you surrender and you allow heaven to speak to you personally. So if God tells you tonight, I need you tomorrow to go through and wipe down every baseboard in your house. Don't ask no questions. Just do it in excellence. You don't have to explain it to anybody. While you down on your knees, God may give you the greatest revelation known to man. God tells you to clean out your closet. God tells you to write a chapter. If God tells you to paint your nails, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, promise me that you'll do it in excellence. All right, everybody. It is, oh, what time we got? Oh, it's 8:30 something, 8:36. And I want to keep these calls at 30 minutes so that you can have enough information so that as you're closing your day, you have enough time to reflect and to think about what it is that we discussed tonight. If you want to go back and listen to some of the previous recordings, you can do that. But the most important part is that you do your work. And for those of you who are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. I pray that our we will do a lot of work together, and you can listen to the previous recordings, and most of all, subscribe so you can get the little ding and know that when we are going live, when we are going to do different presentations here. So I'm kind of digging YouTube. I think we're going to be able to eventually, I think on this platform that we're using, like we can have people come on with me. So I think that'll be fun. So if there's anyone out here who would be willing to join me live, and I think we'll do that maybe closer to the end of the challenge. For those of you who would like to share your experiences with forgiveness, if you would like to join me, just, like raise your hand, let me know, and I would love to have you come on with me because I love interacting with people. I love talking. I like just I like that communication piece. So as we grow, as we evolve, I'm going to give everything that God requires me to give. So I'm kind of digging YouTube. I'm getting used to it. And that's one thing. A lot of times you're just going to have to overcome your perceived limitations. I'm not a social media person, okay? But when you can do the work that you need to do and not compromise your integrity, then use everything that's available to you. But do not compromise. You ain't gonna see me on here twerking and dancing and all of that stuff. That's not gonna happen. So everything that I do here will be in alignment with the truth of who God has created me to be, because we have to understand that the world is our playground. So this is the most exciting part. So we're going to have fun here, and we're going to grow here, and most of all, we're going to learn here. All right, everybody. I love you all. Sweet dreams. And I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be on day 13. And tomorrow night, we will be discussing forgiving yourself for accepting less than the best from others. So that's going to be a good one because I got some stories for you. Okay. All right. Love you all. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.